Joined by NHL insider Frank Seravalli from the Frankly Speaking podcast and Daily Faceoff. Frank, last weekend before rosters are set here, some local scuttlebutt about Canucks looking to make a trade. What are you hearing?
Yeah, I think the Canucks have been working for a few weeks to try and move a contract or two if they can. Not really breaking news there. So they're going to keep trying to tweak. Every team this week, there's lots of eyes on the goaltending waiver wire for one, which the Canucks already got their business done with Spencer Martin. We knew that was coming. We talked about that when I was in studio with you guys in Van. And now it's, really trying to make the last few tweaks to your roster that you can. So Vancouver is just one of most of the league that's trying to do that in these last few days.
And just to clarify, that's for salary cap room, a little bit of room, or is
I think flexibility would be the buzzword.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that could be the difference between 23 and 22 players when they set the opening roster on Monday. Who's most active out there, Frank? What team are you hearing a lot from or hearing a lot about right now?
I think it's the teams that are looking for goalies. That would include the Tampa Bay Lightning trying to find someone to tide them over until Andrei Vasilevsky can be back. The Colorado Avalanche, no Pavel Francouz is going to be out for a period of time. And Georgiev played the bulk of the work last year, 60-plus games, 40 wins, actually. Had a great year for the Avs, but that's a lot to ask, and especially when you know going in that Francouz is already hurt. So the problem for both of those teams is they don't really want to spend a lot because they know those guys are going to be coming back, and cap space is an issue. So you go through the waiver wire, it's actually kind of fascinating to see some of the names that have been out there or will be out there, should be out there in the next 5 days. Alex Lyon got the Panthers to the playoffs last year. Martin Jones played 48 games for the Kraken. Caden Primo is an up-and-comer out of Montreal. And Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen is an interesting name out of Buffalo, although the Sabres might go with 3 goalies. So that's one thing that I'm really keying in on over the next 5 days. Teams have decisions to make, and it's not going to be easy. I've been advocating for a while. Teams should be able to carry 3 without cap consequences.
Has there been a more fascinating development over the last 5 years than just our treatment of goalies and how much they're worth under the cap, how much, workload? I mean, it just seems like it's an ever-changing focus on how to run the goaltending position.
And so volatile on the trade market for goalies.
Yeah.
Well, volatile in their play too. Like
that's
like
part
watching
of the reason for it. Yeah,
it's like watching Bitcoin. Like it's all over the place.
That's right. That's right.
But are as you said it, I was thinking to myself: are goalies the new running backs?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can
like
see the
still critical to your team and success. And you could argue, this sport should be changed from hockey to goalie because you can't win without one. But the way that year in and year out, you have basically outside of, I'd say 6 to 7 guys in the league, and I would include Demko in this category. You have no idea what you're going to get outside of those guys.
Is the lesson don't fall in love with your goalie? Is that the lesson?
I would, the first thing, and when you think, when I hear you say love, the first thing I equate that to is term.
Yes.
Don't get yourself in a situation where you're signing anyone outside of those guys for more than 3 years because you just don't know. And then there's the health part of it. And then it's also, what we haven't figured out analytics wise is what's the impact of the team in front of you? No one's really been able to nail that down just yet and really isolate a goalie outside of his system. Maybe that's why Vegas, maybe they could have just turned around this summer and let Adin Hill walk. Honestly, I think anyone would be good in that crease. And I'm not knocking him or taking him down a peg from what he accomplished last year.
Yeah.
He didn't even get the first 8 wins of the playoffs for them.
Honestly, outside of Andrei Vasilevsky, is there a goaltender who, like, for 5 consecutive years has been the man? Like, even guys like Hellebuck have off seasons. It's a great point, Frank. 5 days left.
Wait, do you want to know who I include in that group?
Yeah, sure.
Who's in Sorokin, Shesterkin, Hellebuck, Vasilevsky, Demko, and that's kind of it. Yeah. And I'm not pandering to your market. I told you before how much I like Demko, and he is my Vezina pick this year.
5 days left before the start of the season, and the commissioner got a little bit more detailed in terms of the salary cap for next year. Frank, I think we always knew this, but maybe it gave some NHL teams a little bit more security. Hearing Bettman talk about $87 to $88 million for next year. Have you heard anything with the Canucks and Elias Pettersson? Does it behoove them to take a last stab here to try and get an extension done with Elias before the season starts?
Well, I think it would behoove the Canucks. It would be really smart business to get it done, because I think in the long run, it's only going to end up costing you more. And that's really kind of the short-sighted way I think about how teams do business. The worst case scenario, let me take it a step back. The best case scenario for the Canucks is Pettersson has a season where you basically just offer him the same of sort of where you thought he might be right now, and that it's probably not going to dip below that. So I think the number's only going up, but I will say that I don't think there's any correlation between this salary cap number projection being announced and the Canucks trying to take another swing, because teams already knew that it's basically a formula right now. 5% off of this year's cap, that's what gets added on. So it brings you to 87.6. It can always be negotiated for more. And in fact, it should be negotiated for more. It's why I think the NHL failed last summer in not getting an increase negotiated now, because you know that 5% is based off of that number. So there was a way to do it and accomplish it. That's a story for another day. But with the Canucks and Pettersson, I would say take your best shot. But unless you really are bringing to the table something that you think will be palatable for him, you have a chance of making him a little bit more upset, for one. And two, why wouldn't you?
Mm-hmm. Taking the acts of God out of the equation, pandemics and natural disasters, is there any doomsday scenario for the salary cap? I mean, the escrow thing seems to be, clearing up a little bit. The money's owed to the players. Is there any way that the salary cap doesn't go up to what it is? And you talked about the equation already, but is there any hidden cost that can come out of left field that we're not thinking about?
No, there could be a slight decrease in revenue because of some regional TV deals, but even that, it's probably all that would do is eat into a significant revenue increase, because they're still going to be generating more elsewhere. Which is kind of why it cracks me up that the NHL always touts like record revenue. Like all you needed to do is make $1 more than last year.
That's right.
And you have a new record.
Yeah.
But if we were to actually, with where revenue is right now, if you were to go back to the old system pre-pandemic, at $6 and some billion, the cap for this season should have actually been somewhere around 92 or 93. So it's artificially low as they're still paying this back, but that debt's going to be paid off in the first, 2 weeks of the season. Like it's $50 million, not much. So they're going to be in fine shape moving forward. The question is, how can you find a way to smooth out the increase so that you're not handing GMs, if you're an owner, each GM an $8 million windfall to be spent next summer? Although looking at the free agent class might actually be a pretty good summer to do it.
Hey, we see Alan Walsh tweeting about this from time to time, and we see what's happened in the other sports. How much disappointment, how much frustration do you think there is there with the agent and player community that the NHL revenues post-pandemic haven't sort of increased as much as the other sports, where NHL players are effectively still in the same neighborhood they were 5 years ago salary-wise, whereas other sports have seen these exponential salary growth for star players?
Yeah, so I follow Cap Friendly really closely, and they created a new basketball version. It's called Salary Swish. I don't know if you guys have been on there, but to see the NBA salaries, that Steph Curry is at $478 million in career earnings. The most an NHL player has made all time in his career is like $128 million. Sidney Crosby, I think, maybe this season is set to become the highest paid NHL player in career earnings ever. That's like someone's getting $56 million this year in the NBA for one season. It's bananas to see how different it is. The 10th guy in the lineup is getting somewhere between 4 and 6 million a year, which would make you one of the higher paid guys on your team in the NHL. Sadly for the NHL, it's all coming back to eyeballs and interest. And every time that, the league seems to be happy about a 900,000 audience on a national TV game in the US, I'm like, guys, like WNBA is getting 2.3, 2.5 million viewers a game. Like, we're lagging way behind in terms of the interest south of the border. Like it, love it, hate it. In the US, it's still a niche sport, and it's still 25 out of 32 teams play south of the border. So, until you find a way to really change how this sport is consumed, how it's viewed, how many people are playing it, the barriers to entry are still way too big. So you can bellyache and complain all you want. The players have been in a tough spot the last few years with the salary cap, and it's a system that decidedly works against them. It's brilliant for owners. It's perfect in terms of keeping salaries low, but you got to find a way to increase eyeballs.
And that's why we're hearing all this expansion talk right now, isn't it? Just to get that money flowing from a bonus source, isn't it? I can't believe we're talking expansion again.
Well, it's not even so much the bonus source. It's that any new team that would come in, we're talking $1 billion entrance fee.
Mm-hmm.
Who's saying no to that?
Yeah.
The players get 30, if it's one team, 30 to 62 teams, new jobs. The owners, each guy with a seat at the table already, they just cut you a check for 30 million just for nodding your head.
Yeah.
And then the TV partners and everyone else, you get fresh eyeballs and people in new markets spending money. It's a win-win-win, except when you start to consider the probability or possibility of the game and the talent level being watered down a bit.
Lastly, Frank, Canucks announced yesterday that Stan Smyl is taking a step back and retiring after 45 years with the franchise. He's sort of Mr. Canuck around here, the original number, retired. A thought or two about Stan and his career here in Vancouver.
So this is going to sound funny, but the first thing I think of is that he is a first ballot Hall of Fame nickname, the Steamer. I mean, does it get any better than that? Honestly,
pretty good.
Oh,
it's outstanding. Second thing I think of is all class. I've never heard, and this is a catty business. I always say it's the world's smallest $6 billion industry. Everyone kind of knows everyone, and the people that people like and don't like. And I've never heard anyone say a bad word about Stan Smyl. All class. And third, I think 45 years consecutively with one franchise is an incredible feat. Even some of the most amazing dyed-in-the-wool franchise players in so many other markets have had a stay somewhere else, whether it's Patrick Kane leaving the Chicago Blackhawks or Bobby Clark, the face of the Flyers and GM, going to be the GM of the Florida Panthers. Like, there are weird little hiccups and instances across multiple ownership changes and regimes in Vancouver where he was there. He's the one constant. And so I think that's an incredible feather in his cap, the loyalty and pride that he's had in being a Canuck for 45 years, 1978 to 2023. It's a long time.
Let's get your vote on the poll question. Is there a Stan Smyl on the current team?
In terms of a lifer?
No, in terms of just what he brought to the ice.
Heart and
soul kind of a player.
No one really jumps out at me. I got to be honest. And that's probably pretty problematic. You would want someone to be that sort of like the closest guy you guys have to it is your coach. And I would say the next closest guy, which is still to be determined this year in terms of his impact, is probably Teddy Bluger, and Ian Cole could have a little bit of that as well.
Mm-hmm.
But two newcomers, which tells you that they didn't have enough the last few years. And I've been saying it for a while. The Canucks have been soft. They've been too easy to play against. Mm-hmm. That has to change.
And not necessarily sure they have an identity we'll see what Tocchet brings. We'll also see what Captain Quinn Hughes brings this season and whether he steps into that breach.
How
Frank,
great is it going to be when we don't have to talk preview anymore?
Yeah,
I
no,
know.
exactly.
This is the last one.
This is the last one.
Last preview piece.
Next Friday, we'll have a game in the books, Frank. We'll be looking forward to another game and look forward to it already. Thanks for this, my friend.
Have a good one, guys.
This clip brought to you by LiUNA 1611, BC Laborers Union. Check out 1611.ca.